Hey y'all, so sorry that Henry isn't here today for the Dr. Cloud show. Obviously, I am not Henry, I'm Jessica, but I wanted to let you know that we're going to show you a clip today from our platform, Boundaries.me. Now, Boundaries.me is where Henry gets to work with you as your coach one on one to work on the three areas of life. You've probably heard him talk about it during the show: your emotional life, your relationships, and your performance. And if you want to know more about boundaries.me and sign up for a 14-day free trial, go to www.boundaries.me to get started. Also, make sure you sign up for the Art of Confrontation, Henry's workshop, where he's going to talk to you about how to have a difficult conversation. You can sign up for that by going to www.boundaries.me/confront. Tell us what you think about this clip in the comments, and we'll see you next time.
Hey guys, welcome to this course on, I think, one of the most important things that we will ever talk about, and we'll see why in a moment, but that is your people picker. Now, did you know you had a people picker? Well, you do, and it kind of like what we're going to see is pretty much is the GPS of your life. It's the compass. Where it heads and where you go with your people picker is pretty much where you're going to end up in some significant areas. Now, why do I say this? Because all of the research done across everything from health to success to happiness to fulfillment to career, everything comes back with the same answer. In fact, Harvard did a 75-year study to discover what is the number one most important factor that determines how well you do in life, how healthy and happy and all of that you are. The number one factor. Is it where you went to school? Is it your IQ? Is it this whole list of things? No, it's one thing: your relationships. Who you choose to be invested in and correspondingly invest in you, that does more to determine where you end up in pretty much every area of life than any other factor. So, having said that, for the most part, we're not like a quart of milk on the grocery store in the fridge or a can of beans on the stand where people come along and just, oh, I'll take that one, and that's where we end up. I mean, maybe if you got adopted as a child, maybe that happens. But for the most part, we are participants and pretty much co-authors, probably the lead author, in this whole story that we're building in our lives about what relationships we end up in, because we're the ones that choose them. We either have to say yes or no, depending on, each situation. So what happens is we find out as we follow people that some people do really, really, really well at this. They really choose good people, and they proactively not only choose the good ones, but they say no to the bad ones. Okay? And so this people picking thing is one of the most important things that we can talk about. And it's pretty much in, every arena in life. So I'm going to give you a choice here. I pretty much believe that there's two options. Are you going to be a raft or a boat? Going to be a raft or a boat? Well, what's the difference? Well, I grew up in Mississippi, and every now and then you'd go to a little river or a stream or sometimes even the big river down there, and people get on a raft, and where do you go? You go where the current takes you. And that's how a lot of people are about their relationships in life. They get into life, they get into a traffic pattern. They go to school, or then they get out of school, and then they get a job, and they live in a neighborhood. And kind of wherever the movement of activities takes them, whoever they meet along the way, they kind of, start relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, business relationships. But it's kind of like you're getting moved through life, and you just kind of end up kind of with whoever you run into. Okay? That's the raft approach. Good luck. You might get lucky. You might find a current that goes to a really good place. Maybe. How many great narrow streams do you see people ending up with, if they're just going along for the ride? Not too many. But there's another way, and that is that you can be a boat. And what a boat does, you get in, it's got a steering wheel, okay? It's got a heading, it's got a GPS. You decide where you're going. You're in control of your speed. You can stop and slow down. You can even pull off for repairs, but you're driving it somewhere. That's how I want you to think about your relationship life and your people picker, how you go about this, the operating system, the way that you think about it, the way that you make choices is everything in terms of determining where you're going to end up in some very significant categories. All right, so what I'm going to do is we're going to go into 3 particular sections, okay, that are really important for getting your people picker kind of in shape. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you a question, all right? If I get in a boat, all right, first thing I got to ask myself is, where am I going? The example you might have heard me use before is like in Alice in Wonderland, when she comes to the fork in the road, right? And the Cheshire Cat is sitting there, and she goes, which way do I go? And he goes, well, where are you trying to get to? And she goes, I don't know. And he says, well, I guess it doesn't matter then, does it? Well, same thing here. I want you to take a moment and ask yourself the question, in my life, in the next year, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, where do I want to go? Where do I want to go? Because once you figure out where you want to end up, that's going to tell you who you need to travel there with. Because some people are going one place, some people are going another place. So I want you to think about, I'm going to give you just a spattering of kind of some areas here. These are, samples of, there's lists of these all over the place. This is kind of how I think about life. I always talk about clinical, relational, and performance. Well, let's call it broadly the clinical sense of things, how you feel, how you're thriving. How about this one? You'd like to be happy. You'd like for life to have meaning. You'd like to have health in your life, okay? So if you put that out there as one place I want to end up, is I want to end up happy and healthy. That's a good destination, okay? How about this one? I want to have some fun along the way. So that means I've got to figure out and go with people and towards things that, how am I going to decide what do I get, my fun and recreation? I mean, what do I want to learn how to do and invest in? Those areas that give me pleasure. How about this one? Your spiritual life. I think spirit runs through all of these, but where do you want that to end up? Is that important to you or not? What do you want the spiritual and your faith and all of that to look like? How about intellectual development? Being a learner, getting rich and deep in certain fields or study or things that get your passion going and get your brain going. Where do you want to end up there? And then finances and career. What do you want for your life? Different people want different things. When you look at these areas, okay, and I'm going to put one more in there, just end up as a growing person that has movement, that's going somewhere, that's, let's call it, getting better, okay? Now, that's not the end-all list of the world, but I think those are pretty good categories. Now, I want you to think about in those categories, come up with a couple of words of what does it look like for you? And that might take a while, and also it changes over time. But when we're thinking about, let's take the clinical, the happiness arena, okay? For example, if, let's say, I've got a history of some sort of substance problem, for example, and I say, you know what? I'd like to end up sober. Well, then there's a certain path that's going to take me there. And there's certain kind of people I got to be around, and people pickers got to be pretty active there in certain activities. But see, that's gonna give me a heading rather than just kind of drifting through life. Or what if financially I want to end up in a certain place? Well, then that's going to take me down a path. There's ways I got to do this. So I want you to think about, what does the destination look like first? And then we're going to go into 3 significant aspects of people picking. Okay, so I'm going to give you basically kind of 3 rules. Let's call them 3 rules. Rule number 1 in your people picker is, I want you to start to think about and define, what do these people look like? Okay, that I'm going to pick to help me get where I want to go. You ever thought about that? See, some people just kind of hang out with whoever shows up. Now, let me tell you what I'm not saying before I get too deep into this. I am not saying at all that you don't want to have friends that are goofballs, that aren't going anywhere, that are, crazy and dysfunctional. I would hate to get rid of all my dysfunctional friends. I mean, I get so much joy and pleasure out of them, but they go in a certain category. They probably go in the fun category. They don't go in the, how am I trying to reach certain goals in my life category. So I'm not trying to say, okay, I got to be a people picker that has, everybody's got to bring a diploma in a certain arena or level of achievement, or I'm not going to be your friend. That's not what I'm talking about at all. And in fact, with some of this is going to be very specialized. It's really almost, we wouldn't even call them friends. Friends provide a lot of different things. I think that mainly fall into that happiness and the meaning category. But let's get a profile of what some of these things look like. Now, again, there's a lot of different ways to think about this, a lot of different ways to define it, but I'm going to give you a handful, not in any particular order. If I'm looking for somebody that's going to help me to get from here to there in any of these arenas, let's say it's career or financial or health or anything, then first thing I got to look at is, are they themselves successful in it? Are they fruitful? I was fortunate when I was single that I had a couple of couples, actually, a little older than me, sort of adopted the single guy in graduate school and kind of became, my family away from my family. But they had very successful marriages and very successful, families that they were building. And there's no way I would have anywhere whatever ability I've got to be at least a C or minus level husband or father, if I hadn't have been around those families that really did it successfully. Okay? Not everybody comes from a family like that. You didn't have the models to see how they're doing it. So the number one factor, if you're looking at any of these fields, whether it's marriage or finance or career or even being healthy and happy, get around somebody that actually qualifies. They are successful. Okay? They're fruitful. All right? Number 2, how about this? I have always noticed that the people that, are fruitful, they have a second quality to them. They're not sitting still themselves. So we think somebody sort of made it. Oh, well, now they made it and they sit in their hammock. They're not like that at all. They're always moving forward. They're always growing. They're always about the next thing. I want you to look for people they're in a jet stream themselves, because you're going to get in that jet stream and you're going to go with them. They're learning. They're going to the next seminar. They're going to, even in my golf game, right? The people that I hang around that are because I'm a competitive golfer, I might have shared that before. People that I hang around, they're always about, the next teacher, the next clinic. They're reading this or reading that. Even though they're great players, they're growers. Okay? Really important quality. They're not stagnant. They're not just stuck. They're moving forward. Okay, how about this? Don't you want somebody that's supportive? Okay, here's what I mean by that. There are people that are pretty much just into themselves, and they might lend you a sandwich if you come along and ask for something. But there are other people that really, really, really enjoy supporting and helping somebody to get to the next level. A lot of times we pay these people right? They hang out a shingle. I'll be a coach. I'll be a therapist. I'll be a pastor or whatever. But I'm basically here in part to support your growth, okay? Now, don't confuse that with warm and fuzzy. When I think of my life as a psychologist, there are a handful of people, I can count them on one hand, that were the most important and significant mentors in shaping me and molding me and teaching me. Okay? One of them was, and I use this term kind of metaphorically, one of the meanest, most sadistic people that I've ever known. In fact, when I chose him as a mentor, some of my colleagues were saying, "Are you kidding? I don't even want to, he's too, how do you stand it?" I said, "Well, because I know he can teach me. I'm not going in there to get my ego stroked. I'm not going in there for somebody to be nice to me. Okay? I'm going in there because he can teach me what I need to learn." So every day I would put on my raincoat against, or a bulletproof vest or whatever, because I knew he was going to be sarcastic and put me down, all this kind of stuff. I didn't care. I was just after his information. Now, you don't want everybody shooting at you like that, but my point is, he was really sold out to supporting people's growth. He was a coach, but he was mean. All right, so we want to find somebody that you can find the softness in one if you want, but I'm just saying that they're there to help you. Part of the relationship is they actually care about helping you. And closely akin to that, I want to be around people that challenge me, that look me in the eye and go, "Is that it? Is that all you got? You can't do better than that? I think you should take this next step," or whatever. So people that are always pushing us instead of, some people just want to hang around people that tell them how well they're doing or something, certainly we need encouragement and all that. I believe in all that stuff. But we also need some people to raise the expectation. Some people that challenge us. I mean, I just recently went through a knee replacement, and I had a couple of close friends that had gone through that before, and they were on my butt about physical therapy. "Are you hitting it?" They'd call me and say, "Don't you slack off." And they were pushing. Okay? Those are good friends. Now, here's another one. Somebody that brings out the best in you. You don't want people that are always belittling you and trying to keep you down. You want people that recognize something in you and try to bring it out and make it grow. And how about this? We want some people that look like they actually like relationships. People that, there's some people you get around and you just fall in love with being around people because you're around them, because they do something that makes us just like people better. I want to be around people like that relationship becomes contagious, okay? And then finally, tough. I want some people that'll get in my face and tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me what they see that they don't like and how I could improve. Now, there's a lot of different fields, you choose these in, and you're going to find them in different places. You're not going to find all this in one person, but I'm just talking about for the people that you pick that are going to help you get down that river. There are certain qualities you want to look for. Now, if you think about that list I gave you, it's easy to think about it in terms of the opposites. The opposites are, they're not very successful. You want to hang around friends that are like swimming up to their ears in debt and don't know how they're going to pay next month's rent, and those are going to be your mentors for how to reach your financial goals? I don't think so, right? Or people that aren't going anywhere, they're just stuck and every year is a replay of the last year. Or they're not very supportive and all they do is kind of get off on laughing at how you're failing. No. So I want you to define what you're looking for in these significant areas. That's rule number one. Rule number two on your people picker. Look at your magnets. Your magnets. What's a magnet? A magnet is something that's attracted to something and sticks to it. All right, here's the deal. Everybody is kind of drawn to certain people, right? There's an energy exchange in the bipersonal field. All right, some people are going to awaken some things in you, and you're naturally going to be drawn to them. There's just something about them that does that. Now, just because you're drawn to somebody doesn't mean that that's a good thing at all. Okay? How do people get sucked into relationships with abusive people or with addicts or whatever? And here's the basic formula. There's a match. It matches them. All right? Let's say I'm a rescuer, okay? That I like to fix people. Well, if I like to fix problem people, what do I need in order to complete me? I need a problem person. So what happens when a good person comes along? I don't get very excited about them, but boy, you give me a messed up addict, right? And I'm falling in love all over the place if I'm like that. So here's the thing. Based on really our past and injuries and patterning and family patterns and temperament and a host of other factors, we're all drawn to certain kinds of people. All right, so here's how you get into trouble with your people picker. When you are drawn in some very, very basic areas, drawn to people that complement our own dysfunction. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you a handful of areas that I want you to look at. Number one, what is your ability to actually be present with and enjoy and receive real emotional connection? Real emotional connection. Have you ever tried to, somebody say, oh, they're going through a hard time, and you try to reach out, and they go, no, I'm fine. No, really, I'm fine. And they're usually crying because some relationship in their life has been mean to them. What's happening in that moment? You're trying to come and offer them care, and they can't receive it. Well, no wonder they're in an uncaring relationship. Duh. I mean, think about this. So are you able to be vulnerable and actually receive love? If you are, then loving people are going to show up. Okay? Versus, are you walled off, detached, or afraid of connection? If you're afraid of connection, you're going to end up with disconnectors. Because when the connectors come along, you're not going to know what to do with it. It's not going to be a match, number one. Number two, okay? Number two, how good are your boundaries and limits? Okay? If you can't, there's a lot of ways to think about this. I mean, basically the law of this is you get what you tolerate. Okay? Now, if you're easy to walk all over, if you're passive, if you do what everybody says, you accept any behavior that comes along, and you don't set limits and say, no, I'm not going to be around that. If you act that way, get your act together. Don't lie to me. Don't hurt me. Don't do that again. And somebody takes control of that problem and owns it, now we got a match. So you got two people that have good limits and boundaries, and they don't tolerate bad behavior. Well, if you tolerate bad behavior is going to find you, I promise. There's no shortage out there. But if you have good limits, you're going to be drawn to people, okay, that basically take responsibility for themselves. So your people picker, that magnet, has a lot to do with you get what you tolerate. We basically kind of train people how to treat us. That's what happens. So that's the second one. The third one is, how comfortable are you with your own imperfections and pains, your failures, or your woundedness? Okay? Now, what I mean by comfortable is a combination of wanting to do well and accepting when you don't. See, we need both. We need standards and ideals, but we also, in the pursuit of those standards, when I fail, I'm able to not feel all bad about that and criticize myself and feel like I'm a loser and I'm an idiot, or in a defense of that, always have to be a perfectionist, and I can only be around perfections. I can't have any zits. I've got to have everything just wonderful and perfect, and I can't show anything that's not okay, right? Well, if I'm that perfectionistic, then what kind of people am I only? Have you ever seen anybody that's like, they're just only around people that look perfect? And they've got all the surgery to kind of prove that and everything else. Well, they're not growing. And you're never going to be comfortable in a relationship if each of you can't be real. So we're talking about being comfortable with, I want to do well, but I'm not doing so great in these areas, and I'm open, I'm vulnerable about it. If I'm like that, I'm going to be drawn to and pick people who are comfortable with my failures. I don't have to be perfect for them. But if I got a perfectionistic game going on in my head, I'm going to be drawn to people that require perfection and are critical of anything less than perfection. Because if I'm comfortable with it, and somebody comes along and tries to say, well, I can't believe you did that, I say, well, that's me, that's who I am. And they either learn to like me like I am, or they go find somebody else to pick on. So basically, if we're comfortable with being real, we're going to match with people that are comfortable with being real. And then the fourth one, basic human respect as seeing each other as equals. Okay? You don't have the parent-child dynamic going on. You're not looking down at somebody, or you're not always looking up at somebody. And people that are kind of stuck in that they put people on a pedestal or turn them into parents or need their permission, need their approval, always looking up to you. No, if it's a human being, you got to be able to look them in the eye as an equal. Now, we're going to respect roles, right? If they're the boss or whatever in authority, certainly we respect the role, but we don't feel inferior as a person. In fact, a lot of people that have conflicts with their boss, it's because they feel inferior as a person. They're trying to knock daddy off the pedestal or something. If you always put people up on a pedestal, you're always going to be trying to people please or never feel like you can become one of them. You're never going to feel like you can achieve what they've achieved. Instead of, if you see them as equal people who have achieved some things because they've worked hard and you can model after them, now that's a different story. If you're equal with people, you can say your opinions, for example. You can disagree. And you can also own your own value and worth. So we're basically saying, I respect you as an equal. I don't put you up on a pedestal. I don't look down at you. And I'm also going to expect you to treat me the same way. And when you don't, by the way, I'll tell you. Okay? Now, if we basically kind of don't have unresolved issues in those areas, we're going to pretty much be drawn to people that it's a good match. Now, here's what's going to happen if you don't. Okay? If you've got some unresolved issue, and it's time to go heal from those. If you had detached families or emotionally unavailable parents, then you've got some growth to do in all four of those areas: being emotionally present, having good boundaries, being comfortable with the reality of imperfection, and becoming an equal. And so a lot of times this represents that we're trying to fix some sort of long-standing dynamic from a past relationship. So to fix your people picker, I want you to do this. I want you to notice the patterns in your life. Why am I always drawn to people that can't understand how I'm feeling or don't emotionally connect? Why am I always finding myself in a relationship with a controlling person? Well, it may have something to do with that you learned that somewhere, and it's time to go, wait a minute, and get some insight about, that's from my family. That's my mother I'm trying to please. That's my father I'm trying to please. And then we unplug from that and see it, okay? And then we grieve it, and we're not trying to fix that problem anymore. We wave the white flag and say, they're never going to connect with me. They're never going to respect, or whatever, and get rid of it and move on as a healthy person. So sometimes there's some repair and healing of the people picker. And then as you're doing this, very, very important to have good, clear boundaries. As you're analyzing these patterns, you've seen it. And this is my fourth controlling friend in a row. Analyze that pattern, then start to set limits on that behavior. And sometimes it even means, losing their number, okay? So very, very important, look at your magnets. What are you drawn to? And let those teach you what you need to fix. Okay, now what have we said? We got to figure out where you're going, right? You got to figure out what these people look like. And you got to figure out, who am I drawn to, and what patterns are going on now, and how do I change those? And then the last one is, because we're talking about picking good people, okay, let me ask you a question. If you're gonna go bass fishing, where do you go to catch a bass? Oh, I think I'll go down to the local Ford dealer. I don't think so. Maybe I want to go to a lake where the bass are. Ha! Rule number 3, you got to go where these people are. Okay? Now remember in the beginning I said some people just flow through life. Some people get lucky. Oh, I happen to find a mentor. Well, that happens. But here's what I know about very, very fruitful people who have full lives. They think about, where am I going to find the kinds of people that I want to associate with? Okay? And go where they are. Now, there's 2 components to this. Number 1 is get structured about it. Okay? Here's what I mean by this. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. If I want to find out how do I develop passive income, do you know how many courses there are available to go do that? If I want to get out of debt, do you know, just Google Dave Ramsey. I'm sure he's got a course near you. If I want to grow in my ability to pick healthy people and stop picking addicts, there's an Al-Anon group in your neighborhood. If I want to learn how to grow spiritually, look at the churches and the courses they have every Tuesday, Wednesday night. If I want to work out my people picker problems, I'm sure there's a therapist nearby with a group that'll help you do that. And my point is this. Don't just wander around the neighborhood thinking you're going to run into one of these. Look in the yellow pages. Well, you guys don't know what yellow pages are. You're too young. You got to Google this stuff, right? But there are people that hang out shingles that do this for a living, and there's people that hang out shingles that do this as volunteers, and there's people that hang out shingles that come together and pool their own knowledge just as a community. There is no shortage of classes, courses, growth experiences. I can't tell you how many gazillions of these I went to, especially in my, I would say, 20s and 30s. I spent so much of whatever little extra money I had going to workshops, paying supervisors, driving twice a week to go sit with one teacher that I had to pay one-on-one, and other kinds of stuff, because somehow I was fortunate enough to learn early what I'm sharing with you today, that there are people out there that can help you, but you've got to go find them, and you've got to sometimes even pay them. And you know what? That's what the book of Proverbs says. It says, buy wisdom, sell all you have to go get wisdom. Okay, so there's structured ways to do this. And I'm not offering that as an alternative. I'm suggesting is all I can do. I'm going to say, I would demand it and command it to you. What class are you in? If you're trying to grow in some area, go to a local community college, whatever. But a structured approach. What about a therapist, a coach, all of this kind of stuff. That's the first way we do it. The second way we do it is the unstructured way, and that's when we kind of find them in life. Okay, we find them in life. I just heard the greatest story from a client that I can't name the company. You would know the company. It's one of the biggest companies in America, and he's the president. And I was asking him about his career path and this, that, and the other. And you know what he told me? He said he knew he wanted to go somewhere in business when he was a teenager, and he didn't know exactly how to do this, but he asked himself the question, where are there some people that really know about business and are successful in business? And he thought, country clubs. I'm going to go be a caddy. He literally went and became a caddy so he could meet successful business people. And then when he did, he started to serve them. And one of them that he really, really was trying to strike up a good connection with, one of them noticed how hard he worked and how he served him. And he gave him his card, or wrote down his number, and said, you know what, if you're ever looking for a job, call me. Well, guess what? He did. Little did he know that that man was the CEO of this global corporation. He didn't even know that. Global corporation that he ends up now being the president of, because he went to where they are. Okay? So you're going to go place yourself and then go approach people, talk to them. Now, I'm not saying every relationship in your life is one where, we're trying to use somebody or get something or this, that, and the other. I said earlier, no, you've got all sorts of friends and social friends and circles and all that. But what I'm saying is there are some of these areas where you're really wanting to grow. You've got to get around the people who are doing it structured in those ways and also informally. And we learn from them. Okay? And I'll give you one last tip about this. There are concentric circles of relationships. All relationships should not have the same priority in your life. So there's your closest circle, there's the circle right after that, there's the circle right after that, and there's the circle, and then there's the big, network of people that we know in our industries and all that. But I want you to find with your people picker, especially personally, emotionally, relationally, love you, support you in those areas of happiness and meaning and spirituality. That's the closest circle. And get ones that you can trust and are for you. And then we build it out from there. And then also, once you look at those circles, define the dosage. My closest circles, I make sure I have time with them every week. Okay? The second rung, kind of right around that number 2. Third rung, check in every now and then. Make sure I see them once every couple of weeks or once a month or something. And so you got to make sure you're putting time and energy to the relationships that matter the most to you. Now, again, none of this is just about serving yourself, okay? As I said, we have mutual relationships and friendships and all sorts of relationships, especially in the meaning areas and love and all that kind of stuff, that we're not trying to get somewhere. I'm just saying this, that in the areas where you're trying to get somewhere, then your community that you surround yourself with in those areas are going to make all the difference. That's what all the research shows, and it's what all the life experience that we know about teaches us as well. Okay, so let's wrap all this up. And, they tell you at preacher school, I didn't go to preacher school, but they tell you, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. All right, I'm going to tell you what I told you. Here's what I said. Who you pick with your people picker, who you invest in and who invests in you is the number one most important decision, other than figuring out who God is. When it comes to people and life, it's the most important decision. It's an ongoing decision that you'll ever make because it determines the outcome. Number 2, that can happen passively, good luck, or you can drive it proactively. Now, if you're going to drive it proactively, I've given you some tips. You start with figuring out what are the areas I care about. My happiness and meaning and spirituality and finances and all that kind of stuff. These are the areas that I want to make sure that I'm going from here to there in. And once I do that, then I've got to do 3 rules. One is figure out what do these people look like, okay? I want them to be successful. I want them to be fruitful. I want them to be growing. I want them to be supportive, all those kind of things. Second rule was you got to look at, do you have an appetite for that kind of person? Or do you have appetites for dysfunctional people that are going to hold you back? And examine your magnets, who you're drawn to. And the third thing is, if you're going to catch a fish, you got to go to a pond that's got some fish in it. So we got to go where these people are, all right? And get proactive about that, both in a structured way and an informal way. And then once we do it, we got to ask ourselves, are we with the ones that matter the most? And are we doing that at a regular dosage level where we're growing and going deeper and deeper? And I'll close with one story. I have a friend who is one of the most one of the most important and incredible mentors and friends that I have in my life. And here's how we met. He is almost 20 years older than me. Okay. I was in graduate school. Some of you might know my history. I was a competitive golfer and continued to play competitive golf after I got out of school and still do to this day. It was kind of my life, right? So I'm floating along in graduate school. I got a friend that calls me up one day and he says, so I got a proposition for you. I said, what? He said, I know a guy, he's about 15, 20 years older than you, very successful guy. He wants to learn how to play golf. And he asked me if I knew anybody that could teach him how to play golf. And I thought of you. And he said, if I were you, I would do it because he has the ability to kind of get on anywhere, any course, anytime. And I'm sure that that's where you would end up playing. So I thought, well, this is a cool thing. You know, I'm a graduate student. I can't afford to go anywhere. Yeah, I'll go play at his club and all these places. So I go have lunch with him. And we start talking and he kind of gets to know me a little bit. Well, it turns out, I wish I could say the names, but I shouldn't. But he had really built some huge things, companies and stuff you would know that. Really, really successful guy. But we kind of, hit it off and he's asking me and my dreams and goals and this, that, and the other. And part of it was in some things I wanted to do in business. And here's what he said. He said, all right, here you go, kid. I'll make a deal with you. You teach me how to play golf. I'll teach you how to be in business and make it work. Deal? And I said, deal. We became mutual mentors. Now you talk about the dosage level. There were seasons where we would 4 or 5 mornings a week. I'd get up at 5:30 in the morning and meet him at the driving range for 2 hours. And in all that time, we're learning about golf, but I'm also learning about the deals that he's doing and how he's raising money for this investment and this, that, and the other. My point being, and to this day, now he's, still around, healthy, doing well, I still see him regularly. He already knows how to play golf. I kind of figured out some business things. But that relationship is so rich and so deep. But I guard it. I make sure it's in my calendar. I look at the dosage. If I go too long without having, he lives an hour away. I'll go visit. We'll go have lunch and stuff. You've got to really, really pour yourself into the most important relationships, and they will become the most meaningful things and treasures that you have in your life.